I'm JJ Heller, and this is Instrumental, a show about the big and small moments that shape our lives. Big love happens in the small moments. Hi, it's JJ.
And it's her husband, Dave.
And today, our guest is Meghan Matheny. She is a musician, but not a typical Nashville musician.
That's right. She lives in France.
I know.
And she plays harp.
Yep.
And she's really good.
And Dave, how long have you known Meghan?
Meghan and I go way back. I met her at the end of high school back in the late 90s. And our lives have kind of intersected a couple of different times over the course of your career, JJ.
Yeah, her family flew to the States from France, and they were in a camper traveling the U.S. in 2016. She brought her harp with her, and she was doing concerts all over, and they came to our house and stayed with us.
She played the harp part on O Come, Emmanuel on your Christmas record.
I know, it was kind of awesome because we were tracking the Christmas album during the time when they came to visit, and so we asked if she'd be willing to play on the record.
And she was like, yeah.
Yeah, and it's awesome.
And we were like, yeah.
Okay, and then she said, all right, thanks for hosting my family. Let me know if you guys ever want to come to France and stay with us. And we're like, okay, log that one away.
So a couple years after that, she was like, hey, my family's coming back to the U.S. and my house in France is going to be empty.
For the whole summer.
Do you guys want to come and stay in my house in France?
So we had just celebrated our 15th wedding anniversary, and so we decided that we were going to take a big trip to France. We flew in. They left their van for us, so we had their car and their house to ourselves for a week in France.
It was pretty awesome.
It was amazing.
The thing they say about French bread is
it's so true.
Very accurate.
The pastries. Oh my gosh.
It's really amazing. And her family lives in this quaint little mountain town in the south of France, and you can see the Mediterranean Sea from their backyard.
Mm-hmm. Way off in the distance.
Wow.
Magic.
I want to go back.
So we interviewed Meghan back in July of last year.
While we were making season 2 of Instrumental.
Yeah, but it didn't really fit to tell the story backwards. So we've just been holding on to this episode for a while.
Season 3 when we get to tell stories forwards.
Yay, forward season 3.
Because we make the rules around here.
That's right.
Her story, like so much of it, has to do with dedication to a craft merely for the love of it.
Yeah.
Because there's not a whole lot of monetary compensation in the harp world.
Yeah, those millionaire harpists.
Yeah, unless they're parents were like oil barons or something like that. It's like if you get into harp, it's because you love harp.
Yeah. It's definitely not for the convenience.
Let me whip out my harp here.
Yeah. Sit around the campfire.
By the campfire. That's exactly what I was going to say.
On the beach.
I just happen to have one in my backpack. We pick up Meghan's story in 2004 when she was 24 years old, getting her master's degree at UT in Austin as she was studying harp. And she had an interesting conversation with an instructor that would end up changing her life.
My teacher at the time, Delane Fedson, she was so excited. She's like, yeah, I got Elizabeth Fontaine-Binoche to come and give a masterclass. She's in town for a concert. I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah. Like, who's Elizabeth Fontaine-Binoche? I had no idea. And this lady came. She was almost 80 at the time, Madame Fontaine. She gave a masterclass, and I remember it was a couple of hours long. So the way those work is each student has about 20 minutes to play a piece, 20, 30 minutes, and she'll just comment on your playing and give you some tips. We were in a big auditorium, and I bet there were only about 25 people in the audience.
So like a big auditorium, is that like 1,000 seats?
Yeah. So it seemed like a small crowd, which is normal for the harp world,
Yeah.
You know, a harp masterclass. I remember that I wasn't the first one to play. Probably about the third person, and I'm just loving everything that I was seeing and hearing so far. She doesn't speak English.
So does that mean there's like an interpreter who's like standing off to the side?
There was not an interpreter this day. Sometimes that will happen, but it was just her on the stage sitting next to the harp. It was cool because, someone would be playing and she'll just stop them, physically just touch them and move them off the bench so she could get on and show them, what she was trying to communicate, an idea to change or a way to play differently. There was not a lot of verbal communication going on.
What happened when you sat down and played?
Well, I was nervous. And I remember the piece I played, it was a foray piece, impromptu. And I was getting it ready for my master's recital. And it was finished for me. I'd finished learning the notes. And I remember I started to play and she stopped me like after the third measure or something, So like a measure is like 4 beats. So she stopped you like 10 seconds into your playing. Yes, yeah. And we would work in about 10-second increments from there on.
Wow. How long is the piece?
It's about 6 minutes. We didn't get through the whole piece because, you only have 20 minutes with her. And it just right away, it's like, no, listen to the colors there. You're not bringing out the colors there. There's more you can be doing. There's an orchestra under your fingers and you could be doing this and this, giving me all these ideas on how to just bring out the sound of the instrument.
And did you speak any French at the time?
No.
Wow.
That was my first connection to France that day when she came into town.
So you're walking off of the stage, and how are you feeling about it?
I think I could have been feeling super discouraged, because at that time I had been playing the harp for 15 years, It's kind of a chunk of time. I had spent months learning this piece that I just played for her, and she basically tore it apart. But I was just so excited, and I needed to get to a practice room to try out these things, and I was just so inspired by those 20 minutes with her. So she played her concert. I went to her concert that day.
How well attended was her concert?
There were hundreds of people there, which is a good crowd for Austin and it being a harp concert.
When you went to her concert, did you notice her implementing any of the pointers that she gave to you, like during your critique session?
Yeah, definitely. The idea of breath in music and phrasing. Madame Fontaine was probably not saying anything new to me at that time. But for some reason that day I was ready to hear it and ready to want to change and to be open to having something be ripped apart only to be reconstructed again. After that I moved to Los Angeles and...
Because your husband was a filmmaker?
Yes, exactly. So I found myself kind of starting over again, playing music. I was working at a harp shop and doing concerts, and I had always, had this in mind. Maybe I could just go study with this Madame Fontaine again. So I wrote to her, and I said, I don't know if you remember me. You from Austin. You played a concert and gave a masterclass there. I would love to come study with you again. Is there any room in this masterclass that you're giving in Italy? And there was room.
Well, a question about that.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't speak English.
Yeah.
So did you email her and type it into Google Translate or something?
So something about being French and being almost 80 years old, email does not come easy. So there was no emailing. It was by snail mail. And I sent her this letter and it was in English. Who knows what'll happen, but here's the letter, and a few weeks later, I got something back in the mail in French, and this writing, it's just old school French cursive writing. I can't even read it to translate it, and I had a friend, a French friend at that time, brought it to him, and he said, "Oh wow, she's really sweet." He's reading this letter, and I'm like, "What did she say? What did she say? What'd she say?" And he's going through it. Wow, that's really she's really kind. You made an impression on her. And I'm like, so yeah, tell me what does she say? And basically that she remembers me and I could come anytime. There's room in this masterclass she's giving in Italy if I wanted to come, and let me know what your plans might be or how I can help. She was just so gracious. I started saving for it. It was 8 months before that masterclass. So what ended up happening actually is just before getting ready to go, my grandmother died, and so I didn't get to go. I think she passed away a couple of days before I was to leave. A year goes by, and at that time, I am ready for a big change in my life. My marriage had fallen apart completely, and I was wanting to do something for myself and just to get away. And I thought, well, maybe I could take a little bit more time than that 1 week like I had planned the year before. Maybe I could pay for a little apartment or something just to maybe spend even a month there with her. So I fly into France and took a train to Italy. It was just over the border. So if you fly into Nice, you can be in Italy in a half an hour. So it's just across the border there. So the masterclass was super intense. And I remember specifically the pieces I was working on with her after those 20 minutes together, just picking right up again. And I remember maybe even for the first time listening to myself as I play. And it sounds so silly, having played for 15 years or whatever, to yeah, of course I listen to myself when I play, but no, I don't think I've ever listened to myself.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, I feel like it's similar with singing and can be true for any instrument. You're kind of focused on execution, like you are performing something. Mm-hmm. And so it's like you're focusing on accuracy and technique, mm-hmm. but it's easy to forget that you are creating art and you're creating beauty, and you, even though you are the creator of it, you can also be enjoying it and taking it in at the same time.
Totally.
Well, what it reminds me of is like Siri can accurately read the English language, but Siri doesn't express the English language the way that like an actor could. Like I would hate to listen to an audiobook that's exclusively read by Siri, where it's like, here are all the words, you can understand them, but there's like no emotion behind them.
Exactly.
Was there ever a moment where you thought, this was a terrible idea? What am I doing here? And why did I do this? Or was it all just pure, like, I feel alive right now, and this is where I'm meant to be?
I was totally feeling alive.
So, like, and coming off of that LA experience, like, had you had a dry spell for like a couple of months prior to that?
So in Los Angeles, I played so many weddings, and weddings are great because it's good money and you don't have to learn a lot of repertoire. It's usually the same types of pieces. So it's
Canon and D.
Yeah.
Canon and D. And here comes the bride, right?
Right, yeah.
But I did so many weddings that I had to take years and years off of playing weddings because it was too much. So in a way, it was a dry spell because I wasn't being really creative. I just needed to have income, and that was the easiest way to get that at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like you're no longer a person, you're just a robot.
Yeah. Yes.
It's like you might as well be a CD player. Like, okay, play that piece, right?
Yeah, you're there because the bride has always thought about having a harpist for her wedding, even if it's raining outside and the harpist can damage all of her strings in the rain. She has a harpist every year. So it's like,
Aww.
People have asked JJ to sing at their weddings. The whole reason why JJ performs is to have like a communicative experience with the audience. But no one comes up and talks to you, the singer, after the ceremony because they're celebrating the bride and groom. Like, mm-hmm. You are a cog in a machine, in that
And
instance.
I want to be the star. No, I mean, but it's just like I think of myself more as a storyteller than a performer. So to play at a wedding for me is like nobody wants to hear the story I'm telling because there's a wedding going on, and like rightly so. Like their focus is on the bride and groom.
And it's important, I mean, to play and be, musical in that setting. Yeah, I didn't feel valued, I guess, was the core of it.
It reminds me a little bit of Groundhog Day, where it's just sort of like I get here, I do the same thing every time, like and so on the one hand you're surrounded by music, but it's not life-giving to you. You're just putting in your time.
Yes.
Going back to what we were just talking about you feeling alive in Italy, I was just thinking it's so interesting that you go to this place where you don't know anybody, you don't speak the language, you don't understand the culture, and yet you feel more yourself than you have in a long time.
Well, it sounds to me like music was the language that everyone was speaking. So like you belong there.
Yeah, well, that's a good... Yeah, you're right, Gigi.
The week ends and you have to come home, or was your ticket open-ended?
So the second time around when I had planned to come, she had said I could stay a little bit longer and study with her after this masterclass is finished. So I had, to make it financially possible, sold my car,
All your worldly possessions.
Yeah, my harp was at home, but everything else was sold, and I had planned to stay in a dorm there in Nice, and then just take lessons, even 2 or 3 lessons per week. After about 2 weeks, Madame Fontan, said, I have a student who has a friend, and that friend's family is looking for a chauffeur for their children in exchange for room and board. Would you be interested in staying longer? And I'm like, oh my gosh, well, why not, So this is my first experience in Cabris, where I live now. The family lives in Cabris, and I met them, 3 children, just such sweet people, and they were excited about the idea of me speaking English with their children. The children were 13, 10, and 7, and this family had said, ideally for us, if you could stay for a year, just for the school year, so that we can have someone we can count on. It was an easy decision for me. Why not stay a school year?
What was your impression of Cabris?
When you first arrive to Cabris, it's just a quaint, charming village, and it's got a beautiful view of the sea. So it's up in the mountains a bit, and it's calm and serene, and the perfect place to be practicing your harp all day. So I was staying in the basement of their house, and basically I could do whatever I wanted as long as I picked their kids up from school and took them to an activity. So I would get up and just practice. I practiced all day until school was out. I felt like it was a time to grieve, but also just to be encouraged again and to come back refreshed.
So that was your goal at the time, was you're going to spend this year just playing your harp and enjoying it, and then eventually you would move back to the States and be a harp teacher?
Yeah, that was the idea. It was an innocent idea. The thing about learning through immersion is that those first months are so lonely, right? Because you're just your brain eventually just shuts off because it can't compute anymore. Even if you're trying, it just, your ears just shut down. So I was living with this family that it was speaking French all the time. And so dinner is French, 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 French. And with my teacher, only in French. And so I felt like I really wanted it. And you almost have to really want to learn another language, or else it doesn't work. So I had this extra motivation for my lessons and just being in the country, just to, every day learning new words and gaining the confidence to actually make a sentence, and take those little steps.
So nobody was teaching you?
I had a couple of books, but the children that I was with in that home, the youngest one, she helped me. I learned more from her than any of those books. And in a way, I think it's because children, their language is simplified. They're more patient. They can see that you are struggling, right? And so Elise, she helped me the most that year. I remember the first day that I moved in with that family, I learned the word spoon and cat, because we were sitting in the kitchen. I was with Elise, the youngest daughter, and the cat had, some kind of problem with her eye. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with your cat? Elise cannot understand me, but we're both obviously talking about this animal. And so I would say, sha. She would point to it and say, sha, it's a cat. And so we were sitting there in the kitchen, and then I'm like, okay, almost like a Helen Keller experience. Like, what is this called?
Yeah.
And a spoon. So I remember that day I learned those two words with her. It was just the beginning.
How do you say spoon in French?
Cuillère.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I still have an accent there, so good luck.
Oh, one more question about that. Do you have any stories about some faux pas that you made in trying to communicate?
There's a story that comes to mind. So at the end of my year there, I wanted to give a concert in the village, kind of as, closure to my time there. And I wanted to incorporate children somehow. And there's a little school in the village. So the theme of the concert was moon. So I was playing pieces that had the word moon in it, like Clair de Lune by Debussy and all these moon songs. And I had the children from the school, as a primary school, they made paintings that were inspired by the moon. And in the program, instead of saying, I don't know what, I just wanted to say that there was an exhibition of art, but the exhibitioners, there was something that didn't translate there, and I ended up putting on the program, how would you even say it? People that are exposing them. What is the word?
Like flashers?
Yeah, flashers, basically.
Okay, so it's basically saying the children are exposing their art.
Yeah, and it's printed in the program, and I find out minutes before the concert, just mortified that.
How did you find out?
Someone told me. They're like, Megan, that's not.
That's
not
okay.
the right word there.
And so did you not hand out any of the programs?
Oh, it was too late. They were all over the place.
They're like, I'm glad this lady's going home.
Yeah.
She's weird.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so did the community sort of like just laugh it off and do you remember any
response?
Yeah.
No, I had no feedback. It was just that one friend that said, hey, look, this is the wrong word. And other than that, nobody said anything, thankfully.
Oh my gosh. And they're like rolling their eyes, American.
Yeah, totally. I try to be on my best behavior because we stick out, especially in a small village here. It's like everyone obviously knows I'm not from here, and I try to be on my best behavior, and you can't always help it, but there's things that happen, and it's still obvious that I'm not from here.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. Every little village has a cafe. And And one Saturday morning, I had a friend in town from Arizona, and we were having a coffee at this cafe. And
Who's your friend?
her name's Erin from Tucson.
And what happened?
So that Saturday morning, when we were there having a coffee, there was a couple of guys that walk into the outdoor seating area. And this guy was just very different, and he stuck out to me. Francois, of course, his name is Francois. He didn't have a beret or have a baguette, but his name is Francois, and he was there sitting with his friend, and it was close to our table, and somehow we started chatting. I guess it wasn't really chatting because they didn't speak English, but we communicated that we were going to be eating, if they wanted to eat with us at this restaurant in the village the next day, if they wanted to come. And so my friend Erin and I went out to this restaurant that next night, and nobody was there to meet us.
Oh, no.
They ended up showing up an hour later than we had said we would be there.
Is that a French thing?
No, not necessarily. So it was obvious, I think this guy might be really interesting, but there was nothing coming back. But that dessert that we shared, it was really fun. And we were able to have this dictionary trying to communicate. And they said, hey, would you guys want to come over and play cards? We ended up playing cards at Francois' house. I remember just going home after that evening and being like, oh gosh, I really like this guy. It's kind of crazy. He is a sensitive guy. Even if we can't communicate, I can see that he was different.
How do you mean?
I guess different from me and different from who I was around at the time. He's a construction worker, so he spends his day outside. I spend my day inside practicing, And even physically, it was obvious that he just was outside and, tan and dirty and beard. He's just doing his thing, is building houses. And I just know, I was intrigued by that. And I just really liked him from that evening on.
So Erin leaves, and now you've kind of found a friend in Cabris. Francois.
And I couldn't call him a boyfriend even at that time. It was obvious that I had feelings for him, and he thought I was nice. And the more we hung out, he started to develop feelings for me as well. But he's someone who takes a lot of time to even just process and make decisions, which is opposite of me again. So at that time when the concert was happening, my parents were in town. I introduced my parents to Francois, and at that time, Francois wasn't ready to say, hey, how about you staying? He just wasn't ready yet. And so I had heard through my teacher in Austin, actually, that there was an opening in Odessa, Texas.
I remember this.
Yes, and it was for a harp program. This lady was retiring, Reba Metheney, and she had set up this giant harp program, and there was a lot of funding from the school district because it's in an oil region of Texas. There's not much going on. And so they had, money for arts, and so there were tons of harps, tons of students, and she was retiring.
So you find yourself in Odessa, Texas.
Yeah.
And you're driving from school to school, teaching in this harp program.
Yeah.
Were you missing France at all at that time?
Yes, I was missing France big time. It was a culture shock coming back. It was a shock going there. And then even after just a year, coming back was a shock as well. There's so many things to do in this area, skiing and, beach, hiking. There's just so much going on. It's the 4 seasons. So I think also that was quite a change going to Odessa.
Which is like desert.
It's desert. There's 2 seasons, and I didn't have my bearings again. It was like starting over and getting a feel for the people and the area. In France, I was now used to being able to have a conversation with anybody. Like, French people love to talk about the weather. Like that's kind of like an icebreaker thing. And so, hey, it's such a beautiful day, right? And in Odessa, I had to figure out what that icebreaker conversation was. And it was, I think it ended up being football or something,
Yeah.
just something so different. But
One of the things that, when we came to France, like one of the things that I really appreciated is one, the pace of life is just very slow. You sit down for dinner and a meal takes like 2.5 hours or something like that. It's just like you're there in the presence of the people that you're with. You're not like rushing to the next thing. And then the other thing is just like the fact that everyone acknowledges each other's presence. You walk into a store and someone says bonjour, and then you leave and they say au revoir. You know, that's what you're supposed to do. Like as a consumer, you acknowledge the shop owner. And then you come back to the States and everyone's just sort of going about their business and not acknowledging each other quite a bit.
totally, that's exactly right. In France, people take time. They take time to say hello, even the double kiss on each cheek, They take time to say hello. They take time to stop and eat at lunch. And the whole culture is set up that way. Whether you like it or not, you're forced to slow down. And that quality of life, that's probably one of the things I love about being here, is the quality of life. It's not a convenient country to live in, so you're having to go slow, having to go at a slower pace. But it's helped me, just to, and even in music, taking time for a phrase, it all comes into the same thing.
So you're in Texas.
Odessa.
You're dealing with culture shock. You're missing France. How does that play out?
Well, luckily, I was so busy and just doing harp from 7:05 until 4:30, and on the weekends, it was harp full time, and so it was something I was loving, and I was super excited to be there. And in a way, it was great just to be busy because I didn't have anything else to do. Didn't know anybody, but of course, slowly you start to get to know people, and that's really what is amazing about Odessa is the people. They're just so kind. So a couple of years go by. Francois and I had kept in loose contact, like maybe talking once a month. And it was like brother-sister relationship. I missed him so much and sad that we weren't together, but I knew that he wasn't there. He wasn't in the same spot. So, I was just kind of having to leave him where his heart was and respect that, even though we did have, of course, a mutual affection for each other. At some point, I felt like that just needed to be cut off. It was time to say goodbye because I still did have these feelings. I wanted to make a clean break and kind of be free from this. There's the distance and the emotional strings attached. So I told him, I think it would be better if we just stopped keeping in contact. I was in my little apartment in Odessa. And of course, it's a conversation you don't want to have,
Had you been like dreading having this talk?
Yes.
For how long?
It had been those 2 years. It needed to be done, and I knew it was a matter of time, and I put it off as long as I could. And Francois, as we're having this conversation on the phone, I think it'd be better if we just didn't talk anymore. And he didn't really know how to process that, so he was respecting that decision of mine and saying, okay, if that's that's what you're feeling, sorry for that, whatever. That was it. We hung up, and I didn't think that we would speak again. So then a couple of months go by, and I get some flowers delivered or something with a little card that says, I'm just thinking of you. I would still love to talk if you could call me one day, Francois, or something like that.
Whoa. So you get those flowers, you read that note, and what does it make you feel?
It was like torture because, of course, that's what I wanted. But now, is it right? All these questions go through your mind.
You finally cut this thing off.
Yeah, I'd finally, yeah. Here we go again. Am I emotionally ready? I had kind of just started to get over this and move on with my life. But of course, I do like this guy. So we ended up talking again, and Francois ended up coming out to Odessa from Cabris. Yeah, just for a weekend. And he said, well, if we have to... we have to say goodbye. I went, let's say goodbye in person. I'm like, no. That's not, still just trying to protect my heart. And he came and shows up at my little place in Odessa and says, Meghan, I love you so much. I'm so sorry that I let you go. Please, would you consider coming back?
When he shows up, is it unwelcome?
Yeah, it was unwelcome. And I remember even after that weekend, he was at a hotel, and I remember saying goodbye to him again, like, I can't go through this. I'm so sorry. I feel like my heart's moved on. Saying goodbye to him a second time. So he gets on a plane and goes home, and a couple of months go by again, and the same thing happens, flowers. And, I still have these little cards that came with the flowers.
Oh my gosh. So timing is not his strong suit.
Yeah, he is someone who takes a lot of time. And I respect him for that. He doesn't do anything just off the cuff. He really thinks about what he wants, and so that's okay. But anyway, the second round of flowers says, I would love to come visit you again, Meghan, whatever.
Just so I can say goodbye for a third time.
Yeah, I'd love to say goodbye a third time.
It's kind of my thing.
But at that time, I think we had talked on the phone, or I called him after that, and we started talking by phone again. And it was obvious that we wanted to plan a future together, or at least give it a try.
So he won you over.
Yeah, he won me over. And he came back again. And this time he had a ring with him. So we had a really small ceremony in Arizona, and then another small ceremony in France. So it was quite a shock again to come back, and I just was asking myself, okay, how do I fit in here again? Now, as a professional, now I have a chance to work here. What do I want to do? And that first year I was here, I created like a little music school. So I got like a group of music teachers together. There were 7 of us, and we kind of formed this music school and had concerts together. And it was like so awesome. It was like, and I had a dream about it after the fact, because it just, it wasn't possible. It was, the dream was me driving a truck that was too wide for the road. Like all of these things that I wanted to do, it's too much for the road that was there, too big at the time. Timing wasn't right. The vehicle wasn't right. I just needed to have a smaller, scale down. So that school, we were going for a couple of years and then just kind of disintegrated because if you don't have government help in France for educational things, it's just really hard to make ends meet. I just decided to make a little music school out of my house, harp school out of my house, so students would come for lessons.
And when do you become a mom?
About 14 months after getting married. It was quite an adjustment that I don't think I was ready for. I wore her in the baby wrap for that first year, and she would be there in lessons with me, and she was doing everything in this baby wrap, just to try to continue on with what my projects were. And we had a great time together, Eloise and I, that first year. But I could see that as she got a little bit older and started moving around, it wasn't going to be like it was before without kids.
Yeah.
I can see you shaking your heads there.
Yeah.
I was ready to kind of let go of some of these professional things so that I could be a full-time mom.
How was your relationship with your harp instructor? Do you pick right up from where you left off?
Well, when I came back, every now and again, I would go to her house and play through a program that I was working on. She still was a mentor to me for sure, and I would ask for her advice. It was different now because I was a professional in the area. So now it was, all these other questions that I would have and how to have this professional life as a harp teacher and a professional, concert artist. So our relationship changed, but it was still so strong. And she only lives about 20 minutes from me and continues to be a mentor.
Did she have some advice for you when kids came along?
I knew that when she became a mother, she took 10 years off from the harp. I think just cold turkey to raise her boys. Yeah, and I have a hard time with that, She knows my kids, and she knows that it's a full-time job having kids. And if I want to practice, it's usually after 10 p.m. And it's just really intense. And even last year, I had considered just quitting altogether because I felt like, even if I do have a little bit of practice time, it's like not like before when I could really play like I wanted to and my chops were up and I had time to invest into these projects, and I was just frustrated and discouraged, kind of feeling like, I can go through my day. It wasn't resentment towards my kids, but I would be with them during the day and I'd be thinking, oh yeah, that I wanted to experiment with something that I heard on the, radio or something that I wanted to try on the harp or some other little thing maybe that I wanted to work out, a little composition or something. And harp was taking up part of my mental space. And in a way, it was making me sad because I didn't have the time that I wanted with the harp.
Yeah.
It's a balancing act being a mom, and but I remember a conversation I had with her, with Madame Fontaine, just saying, I feel like I should probably just stop because I'm not doing what I want to do. I'm not doing anything well. I'm not playing well. I don't have time to invest and all this going into a tearful conversation. And she's like, no. Don't stop. Don't stop. You can't stop. You have your hands full and it's going to be different right now, but this season will pass and your kids are going to grow up and you can't, I even wanted to sell my harps just so that they wouldn't be in the house, calling to me. She said, no, definitely not. The harp will be waiting for you at the end of this season and just hang in there. And, she is 94 now. So after having raised or taking 10 years off with her boys, she still went on to have a career, went on to be playing 60 years and touring the world, teaching and doing her thing. So she's such an inspiration to me. Being a musician, you do go through seasons. That's part of nature, seasons. You go through winter or whatever, and it's just a part of our lives, and you've got to just hang in there.
Yeah.
It's funny. I almost feel like your relationship with your harp mirrors your relationship with Francois a little bit, like where it was that you moved back to the States and you're like, it's too painful. I just need to cut it off.
Oh, totally.
It feels like your harp is the same way.
Wow,
and I'm picturing like your harp sending you flowers saying, don't give up on me. I still love you.
That is funny. You're right. It is. It's the same. Good analogy.
You were saying that you take your kids over to her house to swim. Does she come out with lemonade, or do you just let yourselves in and they swim or something? Like what's their relationship with her like?
The girls always love going over there to Madame Fontane's house, and they look forward to it because she just kind of loves on them. She thinks they're so cute and will praise them and everything.
What does she say to them?
Oh, tu es jolie, your dress is so pretty, or something, or wow, you've gotten so big, or how's your violin playing, and just, taking interest in them. So as someone who really cares. Recently, her mobility is getting a little bit harder. It's been kind of a hard year for her. And so we will let ourselves in. I will bring everything, lunch, including plates. She doesn't have to worry about anything. And we'll just sit and have lemonade, like you said, while the kids go swimming. It's funny though, she always will ask me, like, okay, what are you working on right now? And are you practicing? Without any judgment, or just as a teacher would. You're just making sure she's checking in on you, wants to know what's going on in my heart musically, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You're in Cabris, you're up in the hills. Does she live down in the valley, or where does she live relative to you?
So she lives in Roquefort-les-Pins. It's not in the mountains. It's in between the mountains and the sea. It's really quiet. She's got a little guest house where, so many students have stayed before. So, as we're driving up and parking, I remind the girls that they need to be on their best behavior. There's no fighting.
Look at her eyes when she talks to you.
Yeah. Speak loudly so she can hear you. And so we're having these conversations. And
do your children speak French?
Yes, they speak French better than I do. No accent. It's not fair.
Do they speak English too?
Yeah, so I only speak English to them, and Francois only speaks French.
Wow.
So from the beginning, it's like they had no choice. If they wanted to talk to a parent, they needed to decide which language it was and just communicate that to that parent.
Wow.
Yeah. It's fun, though, because we underestimate kids. It's no big deal to them at all. They understood from the first year that it was not the same language. And, of course, their French is getting better and better. And I feel like their mother tongue is English because they spent those first years with me. Yeah, right now it's becoming more and more a mix. We call it franglais. It's just a mix of the two languages. Sometimes phrases come out and it's like, oh... that's not good grammar, but it's okay. It makes sense in one language. So,
okay, sorry, we interrupted.
You tell them to be on their best behavior, to speak loudly.
Mm-hmm. So we get out of the car, and Madame Fontaine is usually just right at the door with a smile on her face, and the girls will give her a kiss on each cheek, each of them, and be just so happy to be there. And her and I will give each other the kiss on each cheek, and maybe sit down for a drink. She loves this. It's sparkling apple juice. So I usually bring a bottle of that, and we share it together on her patio area. It's really green where she lives, and there's this awesome fig tree. And
do the kids eat the figs off the tree?
Oh, yeah, we wait for the fig season just so, we could see they're getting greener and greener. Then, okay, they're ready, they're ripe. And the girls will run around her yard. And I love just being outside there at her place. So the kids are running around as they want without having to worry about them breaking anything. And then they'll go to the pool. I might be sitting with Madame Fontaine at the patio. This is what happened this past week. And the girls are swimming, and they're kind of at a distance, the pool is, so we can hear them screaming and laughing. Then it's just her and I sitting together and catching up. She has a way of getting straight to the point, and it's hard not to have a deep relationship with someone like her because you're working close together. She knows what's going on in your life, and she does care. So I think I've had many conversations with her of what do I do from here? Conversations, or this is how I'm feeling today. And it's really hard conversations. And she's a good ear. I'm sure she understands where I'm coming from, being torn. Yeah, I felt just being torn and not being able to do anything really well anymore. So try to cut back to do something well, because you're always multitasking as a mom. Because she knows that she experiences this too. Not being able to play like you want. And she is experiencing it now because she's older and her fingers might not be working the way she wants. And she complains about her memory going. Okay, she's 94 and she gets frustrated that she can't memorize this Bach piece. And why isn't it coming? It's like,
Wow.
yeah, she experiences frustrations too. And she will always come back to me as, you just got to keep on going. Don't stop. Do what you can do right now. Do what you can do today. And I think as she has these conversations with me, she might be listening to it herself. That this season that she's in right now might not be easy, but it is part of nature, part of life, and you've got to be present in that season.
Is there a piece of music that reminds you of her?
Yeah, she's been playing the harp for 70 years or whatever.
Wow.
She studied with this French composer that wrote a lot of music for harp, and so one of these pieces is called Vers la source dans le bois, like it's by the stream in the woods, and I think that's kind of her signature piece. And whenever I hear it, I just hear the voice of God saying, "Be still and know I am God." Whenever she plays this. And I love this piece so much. And every time I hear it, it's, even if it's not her playing, I think of her.
Is there a particular movement or phrase within the piece?
So the piece starts out, da-ga-da-dum. So it's not very many notes. It's really still and sparse. And then it just color starts to come, and it's just a piece full of color. And then there's a voice that comes and sings over this color. But it's even from the very first note, just stillness. This idea of tranquilité, tranquility. It's my favorite piece that she plays.
Does she have like a figure of speech that she specifically says?
She will often say, il faut, even when you're playing. She can be she's known for tapping on your knee or kind of pushing you to get, or physically kind of getting in your face as you're playing to try to, get something across or get an idea across. And this idea of il faut, it means it must, life is continuing and you've got to, accroche-toi. Hang on. She says, hang on, accroche-toi, il faut. Just this idea, she's so strong-willed and going forward.
It sounds to me like what she's trying to say is be present, be inside this piece of music rather than just being an external. Don't just be someone who executes the music. She's trying to tell you be the music, right?
Exactly. She detests robotic playing, and she'll tell you any day, even though she's really, she wants the caliber of playing to be really good. It's also if there's no heart in those notes, you could play all those notes at the right tempo, But if there's nothing going on inside, there's no point. And she's been on the jury of so many competitions, harp competitions, and just right off the bat, she'll say, "Nope, that one, there's no heart. There's nothing going on. It's a robot." And I think you're right, Dave, and just staying present and this idea of giving as we're playing, it's to give something to the listener.
She's very close to the end of her life. When she's gone, what do you think you will remember most about her?
I think I'd probably remember that she just wants you to be you. And she says to play as you are. Tu joues comme tu es. She would say that you play as you are, and to never forget that, who you are, and then just to play as you are. I think that's it in a nutshell. I remember my first piano teacher, whatever, Anita Yi. She's just so great, and I was so tiny and just loved it.
And how old were you when you started piano lessons?
I was 5, and at school you could also take up an instrument in the orchestra. They give you a demonstration of the strings, and I saw the bass. I really wanted to play the bass.
Like the upright bass.
Yeah. It was bigger, a little bit more sound, and so I was so happy that second year when I got to finally be with the bass. But I found that I just didn't like using the bow. I liked just doing pizzicato, like this sensation of plucking those strings. So I was happy playing pizzicato most of the time. And it was that year when a lady came to my school to give a demonstration of the harp. You'd have these like little assemblies, and a lady came with this classical harp. And I remember I was sitting in the back of that cafeteria room, like the multi-purpose room in elementary school. And she played a few songs, and just the sound was really amazing. And she was kind of explaining about the harp and how it worked, how there's different colored strings to kind of let you know where you are. And she said, "I'm going to pick 2 people out of the audience to come try the harp. Who would like to come up?" And I was sitting in the back, and it was a dark room. So I don't know how it happened, but she pointed to me way in the back.
Whoa.
She picked a boy and a girl.
Do you remember if a whole bunch of hands went up at the same time? Like, was it?
Oh, yeah. So many hands. Yeah. That's what I find about the harp is like, you just want to touch it. When I'm in public with it, it's just...
It's like a puppy. It's like the puppy of all instruments.
Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh, she picked me. And I walk up, and, my heart's beating so fast. And she's like, "Okay, do you remember the colored notes? The C is red and the F's are black." She didn't know my name, but would you like to find a C and play the C? So I was looking for the red string, plucked the C, and it was just like that first, it's so cheesy, but just that first contact with the harp, it was just a done deal for me. I was hooked, and I knew that I wanted to play this instrument, played maybe a little glissando or whatever, and then sat back down, and that...
And a glissando is like the iconic harp sound, right? You draw your finger along all the strings, and it kind of like ascends or descends,
Exactly, yeah. It's nice to hear, but it's so fun to do.
I'm sure. I mean, it's like, it reminds me of when you're walking past like one of those metal fences with all the vertical poles, and you just like run your finger along it, except like it actually makes a very pleasing sound.
Yeah, but it hurt my fingers. I remember that my fingers were kind of throbbing after that because there was no, as a harpist, you develop calluses and it hurts a little bit if you really go for it on those glissandos.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, and it's actually like in movies and television shows, that is kind of the classic sound for a magical moment or like a fairy flying around. Or there's just something so beautiful and full of wonder about a harp gliss.
You say that like a lady came, but like for all you know, like a lady at that time, it could have been someone who's like 21, right?
Yeah. She was probably in her 30s, and I know her name.
Really?
Because I tracked her down, years later to kind of just say, hey, do you know that you changed my life that day?
Wow. Tell us about that.
So my first harp teacher in Phoenix, Adrian Bridgewater, it's a small harp world. Everyone knows each other. She knew this lady, but unfortunately, she had moved out of the Phoenix area. She lived in Colorado, and I think it wasn't until I was in my early 20s, I had her name, and I'm like, okay, this is it. I've got to contact her. I looked her up in Colorado, and she's still playing the harp and teaching, and just sent her a letter saying, I bet you didn't know this, but whatever year it was, I raised my hand in the audience. You had come to my school, and my life was changed. I play the harp now. It's what I love to do, and I've decided to make it my career. And just to say thank you for being there that day. Yeah, she was just honored and really touched. You never know,
That's so crazy.
If you think about it, your life hinges on this moment that you had an interaction with the harp. And so who would you be if you hadn't been sitting in the back of that room and hadn't stepped up to that instrument that one day?
It's kind of emotional. I don't know. I think God would have... God had his hand in music for me. I know that, but I'm just so thankful that he showed me the harp so early on. To have parents that, I talked about the harp for a year before they really said, okay, we'll try to find a harp teacher. Who finds a harp teacher? And so just to have gracious parents to find a harp teacher and drive you to harp lessons every week. And even having just started harp lessons, I knew I wanted to play the harp, but I had no idea what that really would look like. I just wanted to play this harp. So there is really no control. We can never really guess all that God has in store for us. So I'm really grateful for that.
This episode of Instrumental was produced by me, JJ Heller.
And me, Dave Heller.
Our theme music is my song, Big Love, Small Moments.
That I helped write.
To find out more about me, listen to more of my songs, or watch my music videos, please visit jjheller.com. That's 2 letter J's, HELLER.com.
We'll be back next week with another episode of Instrumental.
So be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.